boy, oh boy, oh boy. Today's subject goes well beyond Robocraft and into the realm of things that you should be familiar with for everyday use, at least in the computer space of your life. AutoHotKey. If you haven't heard of AutoHotKey, you should hear about it now. Stick around. So, what is AutoHotkey? Well, we're on www.autohotkey.com, and I think it'll tell us if we go down here. So it's a free open source scripting language for Windows. You can use it to easily create small to complex macros for all kinds of tasks. So, and this is a very powerful program. It's basically a program that you install, and then it will run scripts that you write yourself. So you put it in a text document, and then you run that script. And this can get crazy. You can have scripts call other scripts. Someone's got a program that basically is a script that records scripts that you can then call and play back, and all sorts of other things. So let's demo this tool right now, live. So I'm going to download the old school version because I'm old school and I don't know all the new commands and stuff. So we're going to do it right here, right now. You see I got the hacker meme, that's for the video. So here's the executable. We're going to run the executable, and I'm going to do the full thing. We're going to install it. I'm going to show you how to use it. We're going to show you some examples in Robocraft, and then I'm going to give you both of the scripts that I've written that are dead simple, and you can take it from there. So, let's install this. Yep, we're going to do Express. And that's about it. So, AutoHotkey is now installed. So let's close this, and it doesn't necessarily need to be run, so to speak. And you'll see in my taskbar here, okay, it's not quite there yet, but if we run a script, it'll pop up. And I have two scripts here that I'm going to open. Let's go through the first one. So I'm going to open this up here. I've got a very, very, very simple script. You can ignore the modifiers before here. I was messing around with using these to, you can bind, you can remap a key to itself, and to prevent it from activating itself at the end of the press, you can put these modifiers here. But I'll show you that in a minute. So what do I have here? I've remapped left shift and space to the one key. So what might this let you do in Robocraft? Well, let's go over to the game and I'll show you. Alright, so here we are in the game. My script is active. I basically just right-clicked it and I selected run. I'll show you that later. And if we press spacebar, we'll get one input. If we press shift, we'll get another input. And if we press both of them at the same time, we'll get the third input. But you'll see that if I do this repeatedly, it's not quite perfect. You're going to occasionally get the other inputs if you don't hit them exactly at the same time. And here is where our script comes in handy. So I'm going to hit 1 and hold it down. And you'll see that I can do this repeatedly, and I'll get a very consistent input to the game, both keys at once. And it's, as long as I hold it down, it's down. You let go, and it goes back. So let's go look back at the script again. Okay, so here we are back in the script again, and we are going to go through this line by line. I'll try and be super quick. I'm not going to linger on a whole bunch of these. I just want to show you that documentation for most of this stuff is out there. So before that though, I'm going to show you how I ran the script. So you can run the script by simply going to the place where you have it saved, and once again, these are just text files that you put the script into, and then you add the file extension AHK at the end. If you don't have the file extensions showing up for Windows, you can always go into View, and you can check the file name extensions box here to get that. So right now I don't have the script running. It's not in my system tray, but if I right click, run script, you'll see it comes up here in the system tray now. So it's actively running. Now if I want to close it, if you don't want it to run anymore, you can right click and you can exit this. But it's always wise to have an exit key built into your script so that if something goes awry and you can't click anymore, there's a way to close the program. So I've got it bound to F7, and you'll see here if I have the system tray open and I hit F7, it exits the app. So let's go through some of what we see here. So if you go to the website, we can always go and look at their documentation. So if we go to documentation, we go to 1.1, and you can start looking up some of the things that I have in here. I'm not going to spend too long on this, but let's just look up one or two things. So what do I have in here? So no env. So this avoids checking empty variables if they're, and this is basically just one of those things that it's recommended that anybody have. So specifying this directive is recommended for all new scripts, and you can read the rest of this if you want to. One thing I do want to call attention to here is the set batch lines. That sets your speed between lines. You always want that -1 to run as fast as possible. So set batch lines. So this is determines how fast a script will run, and this is basically how often it's refreshing through its code. And you want that to be as fast as possible. So you put in -1 here, never goes to sleep. And then single instance is also pretty important. So single instance basically make sure there's only one copy of your script running at a time. So if you have one that's already running and you run another one after you've saved some changes, you're not going to get two different copies of the script running with two different sets of logic. That can cause problems. Especially if it messes with your mouse and keyboard really heavily. So that's a good thing to have. Now, semicolons are comments, so you can pretty much ignore those lines. And let's go down to what these are. So set key delay, that's fairly important as well. So set key delay is the delay between multiple keys, and we basically want it to be 0 for this. We want this left shift and this space to occur one right after the other. So 0 delay. So then how do you get all the rest of this junk down? How do you learn this syntax? So if we go to content, their index, let's go up to the top here, and we have all these other things open here. So quick reference, this is always a good place to go if you're looking to see what can be done. Let's go to variables and expressions. No, we don't want to go to variables and expressions. We want to go to hotkeys. Yes. So this is probably where you're going to want to start if you're first using the program. Start here. Learn the basic notation, which is the hotkey you want to call, : the thing you want to happen, and then return ends it if it's a. So it finishes the hotkey. So it kind of like finishes the execution. And then these are all modifiers. So I've got some that I'm using here before mine. I'm just using the 1 key. And then before that, I've got a $ and an asterisk. So what do those do? So if we scroll down, you'll see this is a wildcard. So fire the hotkey even if extra modifiers are being held down. And then the $ is, this is only necessary if the script uses the send command to send keys that comprise the hotkey itself. So let's actually quickly modify this to show you what that means and why that's important. And so what's happening here is when you press down the key, when you initially press down one, it's going to hold down shift and hold down space. And when you release one up, it's going to let up on both these keys. But what if we use one of the keys that's also being pressed. So that's what that $ was for. At least I think it was a $. Yeah, $. So let's change this to left shift. Actually, let's do space, space, and space. And we'll save this, and we'll open it and run it again. So we've saved it. Now let's run the script. You'll see it shows up. And if I go over to Robocraft here, so this is the same test bay as before. And I'm going to press the space bar, and you'll see in the indicator in the lower right that I have that I'll be pressing, it'll show I'm pressing space and shift, but you're gonna have to believe me that I'm only using space bar. You can hear it in my mic here. So I'm only pressing space. And not only is that key mapped to itself, but it's also controlling shift at the same time. So you can map a key, not only one input to multiple outputs, but you can even map it to itself and have it be included in that set. And that might be important because you're only used to using the normal shift, control, alt, space keys for gaming. So you can map it to familiar controls and have multiple controls added in on top of that. So let's go back to the script. Alright, so if you've made it this far into the video, you are to be commended for your attention span because that's a severely lacking skill in human beings these days, and I'm going to reward you with something truly practical. So we're done with the tiny script. We're going over to something a little more complicated. Still super simple because I don't know how to do anything other than nest if statements. So you'll have to forgive me for the ham-fisted programming. But this is something that's truly practical. So in my last video, I had some comments. This is about grouping weapon firing manually using human inputs. So you can go from a burst fire plasma to chain fire plasma. You can go from chain fire laser to burst fire laser with a little bit of effort. So these are good comments. So Digo's like, I'm not sure how practical this is, especially in combat. I said that in the video. He's like, versus using logic blocks. And then Ketmo's saying, you know, hey, this sucks because you basically don't get the adjustable delay fire with the barrels. You can't do the small delay adjustments, which you technically can, but he can be forgiven. It's not, you know, perfectly adjustable. But with an AutoHotKey script, it is. And it's, you know, 98%, you know, of the time this will behave as intended. So what is this script? You can read all this if you want. I am going to show you what it does. And then we'll come back and I'll maybe quickly breeze through this. I'm going to have both of these scripts linked in the video description, and you should be able to download them from there. All right, so we're going to go over to Robocraft and I'm going to demo this script. All right, so here we are back in the test bay. Here's the setup. Single input, fire, connected to both guns on the same delay I had in the video previous to this one. 0.05 on one, 0 on the other. Let's go into the test bay and see what this does. So there's two parts to the plasma part of the script. It's in plasma mode by default. You use F9 to cycle between plasma and laser. If you use F9 and you cycle to laser and back from it, it will reset the settings I'm about to show you. So it'll set it back by default. It's 50% duty cycle. So normally I'll click, so I'm going to use left mouse button. That's normal fire, right? I have my normal delay between the two. Now I'm going to use the functions I have built in. So there's the side mouse buttons. You see these here in the lower right? I'm using those to adjust the delay up and down. When I say up, I mean I'm increasing the delay in between on that when it starts staggering them, when that first gun fires and when the second gun fires. When I'm decreasing it, I'm decreasing the delay. So, and they're very different. They're not going to use, it's not going to start counting if I increase delay from 50% and then go like 60%, 70%, 80%, because that wouldn't make sense, right? You'd get the same spacing as if you did, you know, 40%, 30%, 20%. So I use the top half of the range. You're losing out on DPS if you do 60, 70, 80. So those aren't even in there. I use the top half of the range for fine control and the bottom half for the rough control. between shots. So all your basic spacings, your 0.1 delay and that kind of range, or like even close to a second, that's going to be these guys. So that's 100 millisecond delays adjustment on the top half. But if you want to get a lower resolution than the initial firing delay of the guns, you got to wait for almost the entire cycle. So that's going to be the other way around. So you're like, what the hell what am I talking about? I'll show you. All right, so starting with the normal firing. So I'm going to click once, center mouse button. So this is the default, 50%. Fires one gun, it's going to fire the other one at 50%. So you can see they're pretty much evenly spaced. All right, and I don't even have to touch anything, by the way. I use the center mouse button. I didn't have to click. It holds down my mouse button for me. So it'll keep this pattern up until I click again, and then it'll stop. All right, let's use the adjustments. So I am going to decrease the delay. So look down on the bottom right. I'm using that side mouse button there, decrease delay. And there are 12 steps for this portion of the range. So I did it once, but I'm going to do it 5 more times. 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's going to put us from 50% to 25%. I'm going to use the center mouse button again. Fires both guns. And if you look at the recharge bar, it's almost exactly 25% if you see that first shot. Okay, so let's continue. Let's divide it in half again. So clicking to stop. Now we're going to use down again. So 1, 2, 3, taking the remaining 6 ticks of the range, divide it in half, center mouse button again. So now we have an 1/8 delay. And it's a little harder to see, but yeah, you can pretty much see it on the gauge there, 1/8 delay. So I'm going to click again to cancel. And now I'm going to run all the way up to the top, and you're going to see that I'm basically going to get the initial firing pattern. So I'm not going to do that. But you can get really close. We'll do 2 more. 1, 2. Center mouse button. And so it's a little slower than the initial firing delay. But if we did one more, let's do one more, down by one more, center mouse button. Yeah, so there we go. That's about as fast as it'll go. And then after that, you end up running against the limit that I have set in the programming, because you're not going to be able to go below 0.05, which is the initial delay. But you can with the other half of the range. So I'm going to click to stop, F9 to cycle to laser mode to clear the setting for plasma. So F9 once, F9 twice. We're now back in plasma mode, and we're going to reset. So we're at 50%. So if I center mouse button again, you're going to see that it's doing 50% again. So click to cancel. Now, increase. When you hit increase once, it's going to go from like 50% to like 60%. After that, it's going to jump to like 95% wait time, right? And it's using 10 millisecond increments after that. So we're talking about the division of time between the guns in the range of 0.05 or like 0.06, 0.05, 0.04, so on and so forth, to the point where it can be kind of hard to tell if they're firing at the same time or not. And then eventually they will sync up. So if you do 5 or 6 times in that range, they'll sync up eventually. So let me show you. So increase. So once, so we're still in the rough control range. It like went from 50% to 60%. Once more. Now we're in fine control. So I'm going to use the center mouse button. You'll see the one gun fire. Now there's going to be a large delay because it's looking to sync up the guns with a fairly short delay. And you can see that is almost where we left off with on the decrease portion of the range, right? So I'm going to walk this in to show you the resolution it has. Click once more to cancel. Increase once more if you look in the lower right. Okay, center mouse button. And it's going to fire one and then the other. And they are firing at slightly different times. So if we look up, you'll see the left one's traveling up fast, or it's ahead of the right one. Okay, click to cancel. Once more, increase, center mouse button. Fires once, waits, and that's nearly at the same time. In fact, I think that is at the same time. If it's not at the same time, I can't tell with my human eyes. So if I increase once more, I think it's actually going to end up overlapping the second one and the first one, but let me see. So increase once more, center mouse button, and Yeah, so they've actually, one's overtaken the other at this point. So it only takes like what, 3 or 4 to get them synced up to both be the same. So I'm going to click to cancel, and we're going to go over to the laser portion of the script, because that's a little different. So see you there in a second. Alright, so here we are. I have my laser pipe organ to show you how the spacing for the guns is set up. You'll be able to very clearly see what the script is doing. So let's switch over to laser mode. I'm going to hit F9 once. So now the settings are totally different. The 3 mouse buttons that I have that I'm using for this script do completely different things now from what Plasma does. There are 3 different modes. There's going to be a 2 and 3 firing mode. There's going to be and you can switch between 2 and 3 and 3 and 2 using one of the F keys. There's going to be a nearly continuous burst fire, and then there's going to be what I call the Finger Saver 9000, or whatever I have it called, which is basically if you don't want to have to hold down the mouse button, it'll hold it down for you. Really, really simple. That's probably the most simple part of the script. So let me show you. So normally, just using my left mouse button, I have the same chain fire as is set up in the video. So 0.1 seconds delay between guns. So using the first button. So you're going to see there, and it was a little hard to see, but this is 2 groups of 3, if you see what's going up into the sky now. So this fires 2 shots of 3 groups of bullets. So we can change this mode. There's a second setting. So I'm using the F8 key, and it's going to change, it's going to toggle between the 2 firing modes. So instead of 2 groups of 3, I'm going to have 3 groups of 2. So F8, use the key once more. So now I have 2 groups of 3. And you can see that fairly clearly. So that's the first firing mode. The second firing mode it's a little harder to see what's happening, and I didn't get the tuning quite as close as the first one, but this is having them fire all in. It's basically an adjustment on the script that does the 2 groups of 3, 3 groups of 2, my bad. 2 groups of 3, my bad. It's adjustment on that script to try and stagger it a little bit more and clump it up a little bit more to make kind of like one continuous burst. So it's just a very short burst. So I'm going to do that. So down key. And now they're all firing very, very close to one another. And it's it's still in kind of 2 groups of 3, but this is like a continuous stream. You'll notice that the one shot on the left is a little ahead of the others. Same thing with the second from left shot. So this is almost like one continuous stream. They fire very close to one another. It's like, so very short delay. And then finally, my favorite, the Finger Saver. I'm going to use the center mouse button. In the lower right, you'll see it holding down the left mouse button for me. And now I don't have to continually hold down the left mouse button when I'm tracking a target, which can actually throw off your aim, and if things get intense, you're like squeezing down on the mouse button. It can save some hassle. So those are all the firing modes. Alright, back to talking about the script. Hopefully I won't take too long on that. Alright, so here we are back in the code, and I'm just going to try to breeze through this super quick because the video is already super long. We've got the usual statements called up here at the top. There's some stuff left over from sending stuff to specific windows that I used in other code. Don't know if I actually need it now. Here are the functions, the 2 side buttons, middle mouse button. There's switches that get initialized here, and then here and here, basically you can change the 2 versus 3 and 3 versus 2 mode here, the default. Same thing with laser and plasma. You can change whether or not it defaults to laser mode or plasma mode. It's in plasma right now, change into 1 for laser. You can decrease this to decrease the initial firing delay between the plasmas. So, but you're going to have to change stuff below if you do. So, going down to the actual functions themselves. So this is the plasma portion of the script, and you're going to see all this conditional, amateurish, nested if statement garbage. And then the other, actually before I even get into that, hypersleep. So this is not the normal sleep function, it's custom. I pulled it from some place I found online. This is meant to solve the issue of, normally these sleep values would be in milliseconds. Problem is Windows is not a real-time operating system, so I won't get into that, but basically this makes it more consistent, and it turned it from something that was impossible to something that was consistent in Robocraft for me. It may not work for you. So going back to the functions, plasma section, and all this conditional junk is the stuff I was talking about earlier, where if you have, if say this is 100% of the range here, and this is 50%, and this is 0. So normally this divides up. The coarse part of our range is going in between 0 and 50%, right? Because if you go on the other side of this, you're wasting more time and you're getting the same delay, like here to here and here to here are the same, right? So you're getting the exact same thing, like delay-wise between guns, and you're wasting DPS to do that, which is why it skips to the bottom half of the range, or the top half of the range rather, I guess, and it does 10 millisecond increments to get you that tight shot spacing. So that's what all this garbage is here. And then we have the laser control options, same thing. You can switch between the two different styles of it. More nested if horribleness, and same thing with everything else basically. And then the wonderful click saver here, and then the two toggle functions, which probably could be done better, but I didn't feel like figuring out how to make something more elegant, so I just ham-fisted it. So that's the video. These will be linked down in the description, and have a good one.